context of relationship. I get to know, sort of, who I am, what I'm supposed to be doing. I learn something about what's happening in the world, what reality is, at least according to my mother and father. And through that window, I learn myself. Now that leaves us open for a lot of error, right? Are you with me? That leaves us open for a great deal of error because maybe that's me, maybe it's not. Maybe it's all the errors my parents made, even though they meant very well. They thought I was one thing, but I was really another. Maybe they had their own issues, and so they wanted me to be fast, and they thought I was lazy. Or maybe they thought I was smart, and I thought I wasn't so smart. Or maybe they thought I was very talented or not talented enough, or helpful or not helpful. But whatever all of that was is something that I absorbed. And I want you to listen very, very carefully because at the end of the evening, I am going to hand out some papers that you can fill out. I hope I have enough. And you'll begin to see, if you listen carefully, kind of where you fit in. There are no scores. So the project for every child is first to get seen, to attach, and to get some fairly reasonably secure take on themselves. But as we know, that doesn't always happen. And so what we're going to be talking about tonight is what happens when it doesn't happen well enough. And well enough means that there's something wrong with the context. So I just want to mention a little bit about studies that were done in early childhood to get you through that. This is called the era of attachment, right? Everybody is studying attachment. So we started, say, and I'll mention a few pieces of research. Anna Freud did probably one of the most important pieces of pioneer research during the Second World War, where she watched children in nurseries. They were children who were abandoned by their parents, where the parents were taken away. The children were orphaned, and they were well taken care of. In other words, they were fed, they were dressed, they were clean, and somehow, who knows what I'm going to say?
They didn't grow.
They did not flourish. They did not develop. And the question was, why are these children not developing? Because in that context, they were supposed to have developed. They were clean and fed and taken care of. And they had shifts, 3-hour shifts all around the clock. There was always someone with them. And what they learned was that they had no attachment figure. They had people caring for them, but they weren't attached. They didn't root. And so they were suspended in midair. And sometimes when children are born into the world and they don't have good enough attachment to their attachment figures, they feel suspended. They feel almost as if there's one foot in the world before and one foot in this world, and they never ground. And so through studies like Anna Freud, we began to understand what the concept of loss and bereavement and mourning was, and they were based on her early studies. A little bit later in the 60s, a man by the name of Harlow came on the scene, and he worked with monkeys. And what he did was he took 2 different doll monkeys. One was wired and one was soft, and the wire monkey had a bottle attached to it with milk. And then periodically, it wouldn't be acceptable today, but it was then, he would scare the monkeys. And why did he scare the monkeys? So that we could see what happens when they get anxious and when they get fearful, just like people. And where did the monkeys run? To which one of the animals? To the stuffed furry one, or to the wire monkey with the bottle? The stuffed furry one. And why did they go to the stuffed furry one? Because it was warm and it felt good. And recently I even saw some pictures, some early pictures of that study, and you can see one of the monkeys clinging to the soft furry monkey and trying to get the bottle on the other monkey, but not letting go of the soft furry monkey. So in the end, many of them were scared, and because they starved, many of them died. And that was the next piece of research. And I'm just going to mention that a man named John Bowlby and later Mary Ainsworth came on the scene, and they talked about how good one's attachment is, how secure someone's attachment is, will actually predict how secure a relationship he can have in the future. And that's pretty much where we are now. Mary Ainsworth did a study that she called the Stranger Study, where she studied children with strangers, and rather than going into the whole thing, she saw their reaction when they abruptly were left by their mother, and when the mother returned, and then she noticed 4 things that I'll talk about later. And they realized that people fall into certain categories of attachment. But the bottom line was that people who are not securely attached are going to have trouble in their relationships later in life, but there is something that can be done about it. But that they will have that. So there are no shortcuts. There are no